Boker Tov, Talmidim, and welcome to another session of Heartfelt Haftarah. We are going to be focusing this week on the double portion, Achrei Mot-Kedoshim, just like what happened just 2 weeks ago. Because we are in a yearly cycle, without having to put in a leap month. Our Torah portions are compressed together in order to meet the standard cycle of uh, lunar months. And as a result, the two separate Torah portions, Achrei Mot and Kiddushim, become one. All right, so let's get started with tent peg stuff. Actually, I already started with tent peg stuff by talking again about our lunisolar calendar. But in any case, what do we got going here? There's a couple of things we can possibly talk about in terms of tent pegs. One is the prophet Amos. He is considered a minor prophet, meaning his oracles are short and his entire collection of oracles is small. It doesn't mean that they're not it doesn't mean they're insignificant, because actually Amos is an incredibly significant and influential prophet. But it does mean he didn't have nearly as much to say as Isaiah, Jeremiah, or Ezekiel. So he is a minor prophet. He is a northern prophet, that is, he comes out of the northern tradition, which in shorthand usually means someone who isn't of self-evident importance. Remember, we've talked about how southern prophets tend to be priests, with all that goes with that. And Amos, by his own report, is an agriculturalist. He says, he prunes trees and, excuse me, allergy season. He is an agriculturalist of no particular import. He makes a point of saying that he is nobody of importance. However, he comes to the northern kingdom. He's technically a southerner. He comes to the northern kingdom and he pronounces judgment against the sanctuary in the northern kingdom, in Samaria, Bethel, and criticizes what's going on in Israel, northern kingdom culture, the kingdom of Israel. So, what makes him so significant? Amos, of all the prophets, is the one that starts to emphasize two things. First of all, the importance of moral and ethical and social justice in the mind of God. It is Amos who constantly criticizes the leadership of the northern kingdom for their exploitation of the poor, for their ruthlessness, for their selfishness, and for their unwillingness to protect and shield the vulnerable. The rhetoric is quite intense, and I'm sure that the elites of northern Israel paid no attention to him, precisely because he ticked them off with his rhetoric. But we, looking in retrospect, say, wow, what a righteous dude. So that's one of the most important elements of it. The second is that Amos introduces the initial elements of what would become Jewish messianism. All right. We've got kings. We have a Davidic dynasty in the southern kingdom. We have non-Davidic dynasty in the northern kingdom. But it is Amos who first starts to articulate the idea that there will be an ideal future, that ideal future will be a time of peace and prosperity, that the current terrible conditions will not go on forever. So he starts really articulating the idea of a messianic era, but he also attaches that to the idea of the Davidic dynasty. So he's saying that eventually the dynasty of David will come to rule over both these kingdoms, and it will herald an idyllic and peaceful era, because this is what God wants. Now, the word Messiah is never used here, and really the ideas of the Messiah that we have developed and we have in our heads today, whether it be the Christian version of the Messiah or the Jewish tradition about the Messiah, these are post-biblical developments. You will not see a fully developed messianic ideology anywhere in the Hebrew Bible, but it starts here with Amos. So I'm going to put away my tent peg, and I'm going to talk just a little bit about the relationship between the Torah portions and this portion, and then read to you a particular section. So one of the key passages occurring in our Torah portion in the section known as Kiddushin, which means holiness, is the holiness code. It's one of three big chunks of mitzvot, legislation, a grouping of ideas about how we should behave that appears in the Hebrew Bible. All right, there's one in Deuteronomy, there's one in Exodus, and this is the one that appears in Leviticus. And it is heralded, this section is heralded by the phrase, Kiddushin tihiyu ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem. You, plural, Israel, should be holy, because I, Adonai, your God, am holy. And that establishes this notion that we have of the special status of the Jewish people, that we are, if God has many children, the people Israel are his firstborn sons, that we are chosen, all of these ideas. Now, notice that the rhetoric is, you shall be holy. It doesn't say you are holy. It says you shall be holy. It's a goal to aim for. It's not a state of being. But, it's very easy to read this passage and think to yourself, oh, we're a holy people. That makes us unique. And that is precisely why the rabbis pick Amos to be the Haftarah, because Amos begins chapter 9 of his oracle by telling the Israelites, you're nothing special. God has watched over many nations, and it names a number of ancient nations, including the Philistines, who no Israelite feels affection for. And he says that God's providence has been there for them, just as it's been there for you. And therefore, don't think you're anything special. So the Haftarah specifically is meant to provide a counterpoint to any potential chauvinism that could come out of Kiddushin, out of the Torah portion. But then it goes on, after spending a long bit of Amosian criticism, telling Israelites to get off their high horse, he then goes on to talk about what the future holds. And this is what I want to share with you. It begins, this whole passage, after he said, I'm going to punish you, you're going to get beaten up, the sinners of Israel are going to be weeded out of my people. He goes on to say, on that day, I will raise up David's fallen shelter, literally the fallen sukkah of David. That is to say, his household, his dynasty. I will repair the breaches in its wall. A wonderful bit of biblical rhetoric that pops up again and again among the prophets, repairing the breaches in the wall. literally means security. You will enjoy security and raise up its ruins and build it up as in days of old. So that's the start. And then it goes on. They shall possess what is left of Edom and all the nations that were called by my name, says the Eternal who does this. The time is coming, says the Eternal One, when the people who plow the field will overtake the one who reaps it. In other words, it will be a time of unprecedented prosperity, and the treader of grapes will overtake the one who sows seeds, when the mountains shall drip sweet wine, and all the hills shall overflow. In case you haven't gotten this yet, he'll put it out here in the next line. I will restore the fortunes of my people Israel. Fortunes, not portions. And they shall rebuild the desolate cities and dwell in them. They shall plant vineyards and drink their wine and make gardens and eat their fruit. It's going to be a time of unprecedented peace. I will plant them on their soil, never again to be uprooted from the soil that I have given them, says the Eternal One, your God. So there's two elements to that I want you to be aware of. Element number one is the restoration of the Davidic dynasty over all the Israelite people, what will eventually become the Jewish people. And two, that with that restoration will come a time of enduring peace. Now, it's not quite everything that we tend to associate with messianism. Nation shall not take up sword against nation, nor shall they make war anymore. I'm going to create a new heaven and earth. Later prophets will build upon the rhetoric of Amos. But this idea that the Davidic kingship is God's intention and it will be restored, and that what will result is a happily ever after. It starts with Amos, and this is where we see the seeds of the messianic tradition that we know today. Now, you'll notice one other thing before I finish, and that is that he talks about the sukkah of David, the house of David, the dynasty of David. It's not that there is going to be one Messiah who will rule for all eternity, which is the Christian interpretation of the Messiah, but rather the restoration of the Davidic dynasty, that there will be many future ideal kings of Israel, and that heralds the messianic era as he imagines it. So one of the major features that I always like to say, Jews and Christians are people divided by shared language. So Jews talk about messiahs, Christians talk about a messiah, but they're just not the same concept. So for us, the messianic tradition means the restoration of a dynasty, not the creation of an eternal king or governor. And so that's one of the major distinctions between what Christians claim about messianism and what we do. So with that, I'm going to stop. That's plenty. And I look forward to talking with you next week about our next Haftarah portion. All blessings, and I'll talk to you soon.